good evening to everybody. Thank you for coming. So, we are going to talk about nature outside our window. And I hope that whatever I say today isn't going to be just for the lockdown, because hopefully one day the lockdown will get over. Hopefully one day we will go back to normal lives. But if the lockdown has taught us grief and suffering, it also has given us time to kind of look inwards. And I'm going to talk a lot today about inwards and outwards and how both can work together. So, the title of my talk is Nature Outside My Window. And I'm going to play with the word window, as you will see in this talk. What is a window? So a window is really it's an opening in a wall or in a roof or a vehicle, and it is a frame, and it allows us to look outside. It allows some vision that's beyond what we really are looking at. It is sort of a window to a different world. So a window in our houses would be maybe a window to the sky. It could be a window to a tree, maybe just a balcony with our pots and plants on it. Maybe it is something that looks out to a park or a parking lot. A window is also an opportunity for action. And because I'm an author, I think I can take this liberty of playing with the meaning of the word window. So, what I'm really trying to suggest is that when we look outside the window or when we look outside towards nature, it gives us an opportunity to act. It gives us an opportunity to grow and also perhaps to get involved. What do I see when I look outside the window? I live in Delhi, and Delhi is rapidly losing its trees, but we still do have some trees left. And I actually live in a slightly remote or a slightly far flung part of Delhi because I wanted to be close to trees, because I need to be close to trees in order to get by in my life. And this is a red silk cotton tree, also known as the semal. And samals come in many different colors, but this one is red. And it flowers at spring every year. It flowers for about a month. And it's full of birds, and it's full of butterflies and bees and bats in the night as well. So, what do I see when I look out of the window? The first answer could be color. We can see different kinds of color. We can see the sky. We can see maybe the color of the flowers if we are lucky to have flowering trees outside us. The second idea that I really want to introduce before I get into this talk is sometimes when we look out of the window, there is a ritual of repetition, and that may not be always a bad thing. It may not always be a bad thing to notice the same thing every day and to really observe the changes or to really understand what's happening to that thing. So my example is that of the moon. So last lockdown, as in last year, the first wave, I didn't have much to do, and we were all feeling trapped. It was a very new feeling to be inside the house, and normally we like being home because home is a place of rest and leisure, but home can also feel like a prison if you can't go anywhere. So I actually turned to the sky in the beginning, and every night I would watch the moon. And one can look at the moon as something that we see almost every day, and one can also look at the moon as something that's marking the passage of time. So I took out my camera and I started taking pictures. So that's the moon at the end of April, and it looks like a crescent. And that's almost full moon in May of 2020. And I realized it's the lockdown that taught me that noticing the same thing every day can actually be a rewarding experience. It can actually be something that I can learn something from. So it doesn't have to be just the moon. It could be a tree. It could be a plant that you have planted. It could be, a butterfly for those people who rear butterflies in their gardens. And I'll tell you a bit about that. It could also be, noticing birds and animals from the same spot every day at different times of the day or night. And I'll tell you a bit more about that. The third idea that I want to introduce really is that of time. So, time is something that you feel like a heavy weight during the pandemic. They always say, that days are long, but years are short generally in life. But when you're in a single place, it feels like the days are long and the years are long and time is just crawling. Because when we have fun, time seems to fly. And when we are really bored or exhausted or frustrated or sad, it's like time is just crawling. And the passing of time is something that becomes difficult. But by looking at a tree every day and by understanding the phenology, which is really the flowering and fruiting of the tree, I found it easier to pass my time. So this is April last year and also this year. But I'm showing you last year's pictures. The semal was in bloom. It's a big tree. It's a mature tree, about 30 years old, and it is full of hundreds of blossoms. And in just a month's time, the tree drops all its flowers, and it has these silk cotton pods, and that silk is actually used in pillows. I grew up using a semal cotton pillow, and right now the tree is just a tree with green leaves. And in just a matter of weeks, the universe of the tree seems to change, because when it blossoms, it's like every bird and bat wants to come and feed on the tree. And then the flowers drop, and then the cotton comes out and it floats everywhere, and the tree looks very different. And the passing of time through nature is something that can be a very beautiful experience. In the West, they talk about fall because a lot of trees drop their leaves or change leaf color at autumn. In India, we have very short spring. But if you are living in a city which has different seasons, you can actually pass the time or observe the passing of time through nature, and it can be a very beautiful and rewarding experience. And coming back to the first idea that I was talking, inwards and outwards, I think particularly for women, learning how to be alone is extremely important. I often find adults don't know how to be alone, how to be by themselves, how to enjoy their own company. And for many of us who were forced to be isolated during the pandemic, learning how to be alone was a very big challenge. For some of us who enjoy nature, we already kind of used to being alone because a lot of bird watching is done alone, a lot of tree watching is done alone. But for others, the learning curve has been quite steep. I want to suggest that going inwards is not a bad thing. And you can have a combination of going inwards, which is thinking a lot about yourself and spending time by yourself, and outwards in terms of being more social or being more extroverted. And the inward outward journey is very beautifully reflected through nature, and I'll tell you how. I'm going to start with plants because I believe plants follow us throughout our lives. If you look back at your earliest memories of nature, probably your first interaction with nature must have been a plant. It could have been a tomato that you ate, or it could have been a potted plant in your house. It could be maybe a flower that you drew or sketched, or maybe a flower that somebody gave you. And whether we go to marriages or whether we go to childbirth or even to funerals, flowers follow us throughout our lives. This is my coral vine, and it's got these tiny pink blossoms. And this is not it. It blossoms when there's a lot of sunshine. And I feel plants are something that we often tend to take for granted because it seems like they don't move. It seems like they're just there. They're like furniture. But actually, of course, plants do move. And of course, I think they are one of the most powerful ways of understanding nature. Most ecosystems have plants as their basis. So you cannot have, even a wetland without aquatic vegetation. And plants make life quite interesting if we can slow down our life. So what was happening during my lockdown? This is my kitchen window, and I spent days crying over all the onions I cut. And I was crying tears because, cutting onions makes me cry, and also crying tears because it was so mundane, the chores I had to do. And looking out of the window at this neem tree, made it better for me. In the last lockdown, which is the first one of 2020, the neem tree was starting to blossom. So those are the tiny white flowers of the neem tree. And on those white flowers is a black and white butterfly. It has a J-shaped mark in the upper wing, and that's a pioneer butterfly. This is a beautiful butterfly that actually migrates to Delhi from Rajasthan. And you can see, the grill of the window, the frame of the window. So I have like a few inches through which I can take pictures of the neem tree without disturbing what else is on the neem tree. So my journey with this neem tree actually starts last year, when the pandemic first hit. And those are the flowers of the neem, tiny, tiny flowers. With some people like to fry the flowers and eat them. Some people like to make a chutney out of those pink leaves. The baby leaves of the neem are baby pink in color. And this is sweet little squirrel that used to come on the tree and sit amongst the flowers, especially towards dusk when it would be basking in the sun. I discovered pioneer butterflies through the neem tree. Because every time I was looking for butterflies, I would look in gardens, which is a big mistake. Because actually, though we associate butterflies with gardens, which is parks, butterflies are a wild animal and they are all over trees. In order to see a tree with a butterfly on it, you need to be on the level of the tree, right? So a window, if you are on the second floor or the third floor or fourth floor, is a great place to see a wild butterfly on a tree with flowers. And I actually thank the pandemic for showing me pioneer butterflies on neem trees. All the other butterflies I had photographed earlier were always at the level of 4 feet, 5 feet, and on flowers which were grown or cultivated. I had very few pictures of butterflies on actual big trees. And the fact that this butterfly migrates makes it even more special for me, because it comes to Delhi at the beginning of the summer, and this is the time when the neem is full of flowers and it's full of pioneer butterflies. And just like that, the flowers go and the butterflies are gone as well. Another one of those things where the passing of time can be so dramatic in nature. I also found the red period butterfly on the neem tree, and the red period is a wonderful butterfly which you can also rear at home. I'll tell you a bit more about that. So, this is a picture I took this year of the neem and the red period. And the other picture that you see on the right is the red flash butterfly, and it's been photographed by my friend Geeta Yadav, also in Delhi. She also has a neem tree, and she was saying that her mental health was. Really helped by this neem tree because she had nowhere to go. And all she could do is look at the tree and look at the wind in the leaves of the tree and observe what birds and butterflies came on this tree. And that's how she kind of went inwards and outwards during the pandemic. I want to show you a few more of the denizens of the neem tree. That's a brown-headed barbet on the left. It's a very interesting bird. At the beginning of summer, it has this call, it actually sounds like maybe somebody kicking a scooter to life. It's got a crew call, and it's quite a big bird, and it's extremely noisy. In the hottest of summers, you will hear this bird calling. And on the right is the very dainty purple sunbird. This is a female. And this picture was taken while I had COVID this year, the second picture. And I had COVID, I had severe COVID. And, COVID brings depression with it. It's one of the symptoms of COVID is anxiety and depression. And you do feel anxious and depressed because you're feeling so ill and you're feeling something you've never felt before. You're going through something that doctors don't understand. You're going through something that doesn't feel like a cold or a flu, and you do feel anxious and you feel sad. And this sunbird that I used to see on the neem tree, I saw her for so many days and I couldn't really take any pictures because my hands were shaking all the time because I was really weak. This is the only picture I got, so it's always going to remain a special picture for me. And again, it's through the grill of the kitchen, so the framing is very tight. This is the most wonderful thing I've seen during the lockdown from my window. And I almost did not see it, okay? Because this is a green pigeon on a green tree. It's a green pigeon on a neem tree, which is so green. And when the neem begins to fruit, it has the color of the fruit is exactly the color of the pigeon. And of course, this is the yellow-footed green pigeon. It has remarkable purple eyes, as you can see, purple and pink eyes. And you just can't see this bird. This is a bird, it is a pigeon, but it's very different from the blue rock pigeon, which you'll see more commonly. One of the most interesting aspects about this bird is that it's almost completely arboreal, meaning it is always found on trees. And it's a very shy bird, unlike the blue rock pigeon. So, whenever people see my pigeon photographs, they always say, how come this pigeon is a different color? And they think that maybe it's a blue rock pigeon of a different color. But there are many different kinds of pigeons. And we are familiar with blue rock pigeons and how bold they can be, how they really come up to you and they live on our window ledges. But this is a very different kind of pigeon. It's extremely shy, and it only stays on trees, and it's very difficult to see when it's in the tree. And again, this was a time when I was not feeling good. This is last year, and one is worried about whether one's parents are going to be sick. One is worried about the state of the world, and one looks at this tree and it's almost like a mirage, okay, because it's a green bird with its two chicks. It's a family. In fact, this family had a nest on the tree. I couldn't find the nest ever, but I found the family. And it's like a mirage. You see it and you don't see it because the tree is constantly moving. It's like wind and leaves. It's like the whole thing is moving like water. And finally, you see that there's a nest. And most mature trees will actually have nests. Most mature trees in residential areas are likely to have nests, but maybe we are not able to see them. And even as our family was struggling, you had a family out there that was doing just okay. And sometimes, being able to see other families or nature, reproduction, getting along, going past, all the other hurdles in the world can be a really positive and uplifting message. Here is where I want to introduce the concept of tree time. This is something author Sumana Roy has written about in her beautiful book called How I Became a Tree. This is the book, and behind the book is my hibiscus, which, this is the kind of hibiscus that can become a tree if I plant it in the soil. And next to the book on the left is a shaitut tree. It's still a sapling. But what Sumana really talks about, it's so interesting. She talks about in this book, she talks about becoming a tree. So that means she's talking about how we can slow our life down and give more priority to things that are really meaningful and important, and have lesser expectations from our life, and have more meaningful, long drawn out conversations with ourselves as well as the things that mean something to us. And she says being a tree or living in tree time at this point in the world where everything is so fast, where we want instant gratification all the time. We want, if you're making a post, we want people to like it. If you're doing anything, we want people to know. By we take pictures of everything we do, we upload it. Everything is about instant gratification. In a world like this, I find her philosophy so enchanting and so refreshing, because living in tree time is really about slowing down, even if it's for 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day, looking outside, seeing what you find. And again, it's the beauty of repetition. You may be seeing the very same thing every day, but the very same thing every day is not the same. It's going to be a little bit different, whether it's a tree, whether it's the moon, whether it's a plant, whether it's a bird that's nesting near you. And by being able to slow down and by being able to enjoy the silences, one can actually lead a life that has meaning, that has it's a way of learning patience. And I thought this was a tremendous book, and I wanted to introduce this concept to all of you. This is my second tree, the Amaldas, and I had to show you this tree because obviously it's such an amazing tree, and this is something you'll see in many parts of India. And again, this is one of those trees that when it's not flowering, you're going to miss this tree. Just like the semal, when the semal is not in flower, you may just think it's any other tree. But when the semal or the amaltas, this is the amaltas, when they begin to flower, you cannot deny the existence of the tree. The tree is everything because it just steals your eyes. So, it's called by many names, but I will just say amaltas. And it has these rich golden flowers. And most of the trees of the amaltas will actually shed their leaves. So it's only going to be flowers, similar to the semal tree that when it's flowering, it tends to drop its leaves. So you just see the flower. So when I started observing the amaltas, I started seeing, not all amaltas are yellow. So we like diversity. So it's nice that, some of the trees are different shades. So some of them are lighter, almost white, and some of them are darker, darker yellow. And just observing something as simple and really quite mundane as this, is interesting to me because it is something that I didn't know and it's something that I found out myself. So it started with that tree outside my window. And now every time I see an amaltas, if I'm going somewhere, I make it a point to stop and to take a picture or to make a note. And, while this may not be earth shattering information, it's important for the diary inside my head because it's something that's disconnected. It's my way of participating in tree time. It's my way of going inwards, in a world full of noise. It's my way of calming down and exhaling. And I also want to introduce the idea of tree monitoring because some of us may want to observe trees or observe nature in a more structured fashion, or perhaps we want to use citizen science so that our observations can help. Citizen science is a way in which citizens can upload data or share information, share observations, so that that can be used in understanding the species. So on the left is a graph of the amalthus tree. Now the amalthus requires heat and sunshine, and it tends to flower first in South India, and it flowers a little later in North India, which is true for many trees. So Vishu is this huge festival in Kerala, and the festival, like many other festivals of ours, coincides with flowering and fruiting of certain species. So the amalthas flowers during Vishu in Kerala, and therefore the flowers are used in the offerings they make and the celebrations. So this is a graph of trees that were observed when they flowered during Vishu. So you see the red line, that is actually the Vishu festival. So in 2015, for example, the amalthas trees that were studied flowered a little before the festival. In 2016, it coincided, the flowering of the trees coincided with the festival. And in 2017, again, it was a little before the festival. Now, why is this important? It may again seem rather mundane, but a lot of climate studies are like this, in which we try to understand the impacts of climate or changing climate on phenology, which is the flowering or fruiting of a tree. And here is where I want to introduce, Season Watch. My colleagues at Season Watch, they are the ones who made this graph and they did the study. They have a website. Please do look them up because I will come back to them in a bit. But I'm just trying to say to you, you can look at the tree outside your window or in your park just for your own satisfaction, just to go inwards and to enjoy tree time. You can also do that as part of a larger citizen science effort if that is something that appeals to you or to your children or to anybody that you know. And this kind of information helps us in understanding what really is happening with the world. Because, a few years ago, everything was anecdotal. When nobody was talking about climate change, uh, everybody kept saying this summer is so hot or this winter is so cold or, it's raining at a funny time. Now we're actually trying to map some of these things to actually get hard data as to what really is happening to our world. And in fact, trees can help us understand what are the impacts of global warming and climate change. I want to talk about another author, favorite author of mine. Again, the concept of trees and how really they immerse us in their world. This is from a review that I did of Robert Macfarlane's book called Underland. He says, rivers of sap flow in the trees around us. Rivers of sap flow in the trees around us. If we place a stethoscope on the trunk, you would hear the sap bubbling and crackling. So this goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, that we often tend to underestimate plants because we think that they don't move, or we kind of take them for granted because they're not making any sound, or, it's not like a mammal that's going to bark, or it's not like a bird that's going to sing. But actually, of course, trees do move. And, if you observe trees for a long time, you begin to see signs of age on them, signs of beauty, vitality, age, wisdom. Even some people think oak trees look very wise. Some people think a blue pine tree is a majestic tree. And most people would agree that the ficus trees in India, the banyans and the peepals, are some of the most beautiful trees they have ever seen. Looking at the trees around me during the lockdown showed me all of these other things. So that the first one is a blue rock pigeon, a bird that we all know. It was breaking off a branch of a super bull tree, that's a super bull, to nest outside my window, blocking my air conditioner. The second one is the yellow-footed green pigeon. That is a shirish tree. Those are pods of the shirish, and they have seeds in them. And in the night or in at any time when it's windy, the pods hit against each other, and it makes a very interesting sound. So that is the green pigeon. It is breaking off the branch of the shirish again to make a nest. And the third is the striped palm squirrel. It's gathering nesting material to make a nest. For those who haven't seen a squirrel nest, you if you ever see a big something that looks like a big ball, basically a big ball of like it looks like jute and wool. It's usually soft material. Basically, it looks like a big, giant, fluffy ball that would probably be a squirrel nest. And they like to, take this kind of material, which is uh, stuff coming out of They'll pick up flowers. They will pick up socks. A lot of my socks have been sacrificed to the squirrels, and this guy had just picked up these leaves, and it was kind of rolling them around to kind of make it a mass, a ball that it could take up the tree. This is a study that I did a few years ago, and I continue to do the study, and I've done it this year as well. So it started with the semal tree outside my house, which it started because the semal was so beautiful. Because the red flowers that you see here in this picture were just so gorgeous. And I began to see I was photographing the flowers, that I was photographing the tree, and the tree led me to all the birds and really to bird watching. So actually looking at the tree, at a plant which many of us consider uninteresting, can lead us to a lot of life and a lot of liveliness. So this is a tree, that's the semal, and for between 6:30 to 9:30 every day, I would study the semal while it was flowering. And the semal only flowers once a year. So it's interesting in terms of what it does to the ecosystem around it, in terms of what all comes to visit it. And here is what I had to say. This has been published. Only once a year, a tall tree with thorny bark bursts dramatically into blossom. In red, orange, and yellow variants, the flowers are on a cheerful rebellion against poor air quality indexes above 200, against our apathy, and against the road widening stresses. The semal tree defies all expectations because it's actually doing well in struggling and dry cities like Delhi. Okay. And I'm just going to show you what all I have found. So, as I said, I took pictures of this tree in South Delhi for 15 days. And I've been doing this every year since. And this is a tree, okay, which is very representative of the kinds of trees you'll see outside your houses in cities. So this is not in some forest, this is not in some national park, this is just a tree outside my house. This is the kind of tree you're likely to have outside your houses, in the sense that it's growing in a nutrient poor environment. It is growing, it is not getting any special care, nobody's watering it, nobody is really doing anything for it. It's just growing by itself. So what I find is not just the fact that the semal flowers and birds and bees and mammals come to the tree, but I also find many interrelationships on this very tree. So, for example, this is again the green pigeon, and on the right are these gray hornbills, and the gray hornbills they nest in big tall trees. So a tree of a certain age and height is the kind of tree a gray hornbill wants. And they are coming and they feed on the flowers, but they also try to nest on a tree like a semal tree by creating a hole in the trunk of the tree. And I found this guy. This is outside my window. Uh, this is such an ironic image, really. because you have this beautiful peacock with this beautiful morning light, beautiful red flowers. It's so perfect, and there's a big electric line going through it. And wherever this photograph has been published, everyone says, "Oh God, that's a terrible line. This is what is this wire going through the picture?" And I just say, "Well, that's reality in the city, right?" And I don't want to Photoshop it. I don't use Photoshop, but I don't want to touch the image, because this is really how it is. And some birds like peacocks and peafowl are actually doing well in cities, and sometimes we get to see these kind of amazing sights. It looks like a Mughal painting to me. And at this point, it's important for me to say that if you are interested in bird watching, it's important to wake up early in the morning. So this picture is taken at 6:30 in the morning, around 6:30. 6:30, 6:40. And it's also nice to photograph birds in the golden hour in the evening, which is whatever time you have sunset in your city. And it's not so easy to see birds. You see more birds in the morning. So morning, you have to wake up early if you're a bird watcher. And if you like butterflies, then afternoon and early, a little later in the morning is good, when the sun comes out. So you can choose whether you want to go with birds or butterflies, but it's not so easy to see them at the other times. So whenever people do see these pictures, they always say, "What did you do? How did the bird come?" And I say, well, you have to wake up early in the morning to see birds, and also to get this beautiful light. This is morning golden hour, where the sun is just coming up, and it's just beautiful. Everything looks mellow and golden. Here are some of the other birds, because I've been studying the semal tree. So the birds right in the middle, I'll start with them. Those are the red-naped ibis. So this is a tree next to a huge road in Delhi. And I've taken this picture also during the lockdown. I was driving somewhere, but I stopped for 10 minutes near the tree, because that's what I do. I try to stop near trees that are flowering, just to get even 10 minutes of tree time every day. It's important. Sometimes I can't do more than 10 minutes. And so this is a colony of red-naped ibis, and it looks like a dinosaur, and it sounds like a dinosaur. It's got this really primeval call, and it looks like a little reptilian also. It's got this long beak, and there's an entire colony of these guys on this red semal, including some juveniles as well. On the left, that little green bird is a bee eater. It's a green bee eater. It's come to Delhi, and it's on a semal tree. And it's actually, I don't think it's drinking the nectar. I've never seen it drinking nectar. It actually eats the insects and the bees that come on the tree. And below that is the collared dove, a beautiful bird of my childhood. It has such a beautiful call. I really love the call of the collared dove. It was just, usually I just see them sitting on the semal. I haven't seen them really feeding. And on the extreme right, that's the brown-headed barbet again. It was drinking nectar from the semal flower. So these are all semal trees in different parts of the city. These are all trees, in places which are very city-like. They're not really inside some wonderful park. So if you go early in the morning and look at a tree, you are likely to see these birds, even if it's next to a road. I want to share some pictures from Bombay. This is Sanjay Gandhi National Park. I was there a couple of years ago, and this again is a semal tree. And as I said, the semal tree took me to bird watching, and I'm sure it can do the same for many of you. If you find a good flowering tree outside your window, I promise you're going to see birds. So the first one, the black and white bird, it's a oriental magpie robin. It has a beautiful song. The second one is a golden oriole female, extremely shy, very hard to take that picture. The one at the bottom, that is the right bottom, that's a purple rumped sunbird. And the one on the left, the bottom left, is the black drongo. Black drongo is a hunting bird, and it was hunting all the insects that came on the semal. So I saw all of this in one day, and I'm saying to you that you can do the same if you so wish to. It's totally possible to see so many birds on one single tree in one day. And here is where I come back to my idea of the window. So the window is something that you're looking out of, and your immediate window could be a balcony, it could be a terrace, it could be a garden. But I just want to expand that concept a little bit. Can we expand the window, which is the window in our house, to maybe just your neighborhood? What can we find in our neighborhood? So I'm going back to season watch. I would love it if more people went and saw what season watch is doing and why it's important. So this is a gulmohar tree. All Bombay people know this tree. Such a lovely tree. It's flowering right now. Such a cheerful and happy thing to see during the lockdown. So many people have put up pictures of the gulmohar during the lockdown, saying it really cheers them up to see such a flaming red and yellow flowers. So, what season word suggests is basically a module to study a tree. So it says, this illustration has little children, but honestly, I really feel like a little girl when I look at a big tree. I always feel awed. So I mean, it doesn't have to just be for children; it could also be for adults. So it basically says, with a friend or a family member, you could find a tree in your house, in your school, wherever you are comfortable, and you can just start noting down what's happening on the tree. Does it have flowers? Does it have fruit? Does it have leaves? If it's a deciduous tree, it won't have leaves in all times of the year. What is the color? So I showed you how the neem tree, the leaves become pink when the leaves are new. The same is true for people trees as well. When the leaves are new, they are this beautiful shell pink, and slowly they become dark green, they become lime green and then dark green. And then it says, quietly and carefully observe the tree. Do you see any animals on it? Which part of the tree are they on? What are they doing? And here I have to say, I have to basically exert my right as a conservation biologist and say, a lot of people believe that animals are basically just wasting their time or doing something stupid. I can tell you from all that I've observed from animals, I've never seen them wasting time or doing anything stupid. They always are doing something that is connected to their survival and basically to living their life. So if you see a bird on a tree, it's not just sitting on the tree. This probably, it's part of some, either some courtship, either feeding, it could be resting, but it's certainly not sitting there because it has nothing better to do. So when season word says, try to see which part of the tree the bird is on or the animal is on, what is it doing, it's actually a very logical thing. So I showed you the green pigeon, for example, and the green pigeon is a shy bird. It will always be inside the canopy of the tree during the day. But at dusk and at dawn, when the sun is coming out, or when the sun rays are slanting and beautiful, it comes and sits on the top of the tree always because it likes to bask. And therefore, to see a yellow-footed green pigeon, you should see the tops of the trees early in the morning or at sunset. And this is a kind of behavior that is relevant for the yellow-footed green pigeon. A different bird would have different kinds of behavior. And I have never found an animal wasting time ever in my life. And if you observe animals in wildlife, you may find the same. And then it says, look for old leaves fallen under your tree and pick up a couple of them and show these leaves to other people. Look at the shapes, look at the texture. I see a lot of corporate or self-help books, which are always bestsellers about how we can help ourselves, how we can change our lives. And all of this may seem very juvenile or it may seem very childlike. But I find that the simplest of things are the most sophisticated. And even to be able to pick up the leaf of a tree, to be able to see what it's like, and to be able to know what kind of leaves are around you is a beautiful exercise that can really help be a meditative exercise, really. And it is something that really quietens the noise within oneself. That is what I find is relevant for me. And talking about the window and expanding the window, like the last slide I showed you, in which season watch is urging us to find a tree which we can watch for the entire year, or maybe for many years, if that could be done. I want to expand the idea of the window a bit. So, Delhi is a city of monuments, and I go to monuments to see the big trees over there because a lot of these monuments have protected sites, and there'll be a big tree. So this is the Lakar Burj in Sundar Nursery in Delhi, and that's a big old semal tree next to it. And I want to say that your neighborhood, your neighboring park, the park next to the mother dairy, or maybe just a road that you may be walking on within your colony, or maybe just a place like this, which is a little bit of an open space, could also be your window. If it's something that you can incorporate in your life, maybe 2 times a week or 3 times a week, I'm suggesting that the window doesn't just have to be the window in your house. It could be your window of opportunity to go to a slightly different place and begin to observe nature. So this is a rose-ringed parakeet, one of my favorite birds, the mid-two on the semal next to that monument. And also, by expanding my window, I have seen many other things. This is the brown-headed barbet making a nest hole in another old semal tree, and this is rose-ringed parakeet. So what it's doing is it's polishing the hole in which it nests. So it has to maintain the hole. It's taking out the droppings and cleaning up its house. Where it's going to raise its chicks, there's also a large semal tree. And I found this in a park near my house. And again, I went early in the morning. If you go, during the day when the sun is very bright and there are many people, you may not see so many birds. And by expanding my window during the lockdown, I just went to this park near my house again, and I saw this guy. Oh, that was short. Okay, I just want to show you that that butterfly, it kind of looks like the plain tiger, but it's actually not. That's the Danade egg fly, which copies and imitates the orange and black plain tiger butterfly, because the plain tiger butterfly is toxic and other birds or animals are not eating it, and that's why this butterfly mimics the plain tiger, though it's not the plain tiger. And this is just in my neighborhood park, and I just find it interesting that I can see all this within a city with all its incumbent problems. And during this lockdown, I also I went to this park a little bit later because I wanted to see butterflies. So this is September last year, when the parks were still open, the colony parks were open. And again, to see butterflies, we should go when the sun is up a bit. So this is not 6:30 in the morning. This is 8:30 in the morning. So these are two pansies. On the left, you have the yellow pansy, the lemon pansy. On the right, you have the yellow pansy, and these are such beautiful butterflies. And if you see the wings, they have eyes on the wings. Those circles. On the left, you can see it more clearly. The butterfly is basically trying to ward off any predators, and those marks, those circles, actually resemble eyes. So maybe the predator is not going to eat the butterfly. And there are certain moths which have eyes that look like basically an owl looking at you. So it's almost like there's an owl sitting there and looking at you. So hopefully it's something that scares the other birds who are trying to eat this butterfly. I also saw the little orange tip, the one on the left. It's such a beautiful butterfly. It's you see the orange tip when it opens its wings. You don't see it when the wings are closed. And butterflies are amazing like that. They could be very drab from the outside. This is one is like a very light yellow color on the outside. But then it opens its wings and it's got this beautiful orange patches. And that is a rather battered blue tiger butterfly that I saw in September last year, just in a very small patch of area in a park in Delhi. And you can also see reproduction if you're looking at nature if you're expanding your window, and you can look at reproduction in your colony parks, because butterflies are certainly mating and reproducing somewhere around you. And in fact, people also rear butterflies in their own gardens and balconies. I'll tell you a bit about that. This is my friend's garden. So this is a red Piro. If you remember, red Piro is the butterfly which I showed you sitting on the neem. So this is a bryophyllum leaf. It's like a succulent leaf, and that's the caterpillar inside the leaf, and it has eaten the leaf. And a lot of people ask if caterpillars kill plants, but they don't. Most plants are able to recover. So what people are doing, and a lot of people have done this in the lockdown, a lot of my friends in Bombay have done it and in Delhi have done it, that they find caterpillars on plants in their houses, and they take the caterpillar very carefully along with the leaves that it eats. So this is important. You have to give it the leaves that it eats, and they put it in a box. They make holes in the box and they put it, and they observe it. And the butterfly makes a chrysalis. It breaks the chrysalis. It comes out. Uh, the caterpillar metamorphoses into the butterfly, and they release the butterfly. And on the right is a more close up view of the same thing. And this has been, I know a lot of people who've had these butterfly babies during the lockdown. And now that the butterflies are no longer babies, in the sense that they've been, released in the gardens, they've come back to reproduce in the same place. And while most butterflies are going to use general flowers to drink nectar, they use very specific plants as host plants. So this red Pero butterfly will lay its eggs on bryophyllum only, that I know of till now. It's not going to go and just lay its eggs on any plant. So in order to attract a particular kind of butterfly, you may need to have a particular plant. So there's a lime butterfly, for example. It's a big, flashy, beautiful butterfly. It only lay eggs on the lime plant. I want to tell you a bit about Mumbai, I'm sorry. And it's Bombay for me because I work for Bombay Natural History Society, but Mumbai. So if you're looking at our window being a bit bigger, not just the window outside in our houses, and we just look at the coastline as an open space, as a place that we can be a bit free in. So this is a dolphin, first of all, and this is this amazing picture taken by my friend Shaunak. I'm just going to try to move this panel because I can't read. It says an Indian Ocean. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'll read from my phone. So you can see the skyline, and you can see just the hump of the dolphin. And the amazing thing is that such a picture usually you see, not in cities. You see such pictures in places where people go to see dolphins, such as, Chilika, or, places which are more out, which are more pelagic, more out into the sea. So this is an Indian Ocean humpback dolphin, and it has the imposing South Mumbai skyline in the background. And while these beautiful animals aren't spotted as regularly as some of other Mumbai's megafauna, they're as much part of the city as, say, the leopard. This is what Shaunak has to say. And Mumbai's western seaboard is home to multiple pods of dolphins. So, people have seen dolphins during the lockdown, and they've asked, whether this is something that only happened during the lockdown. But, Mumbai has always had dolphins, and there have been dolphin sightings way before the lockdown as well. So this could be your window, and I will encourage you to go to Marine Life of Mumbai. That's the website link at the bottom. It's a bunch of volunteers, and they do walks in Mumbai, and they will take you to the coastline, and they will show you like this amazing thing. So if you look carefully at this picture, there are these colorful organisms at the bottom of the image. And he says, Shaunak says, just a short walk from the iconic Priyadarshini Park on Nepean Sea Road is a wonderland of marine creatures that one would expect to see only on a pristine island. This is a colony of violet zoanthids. These are sessile animals related to jellyfish and corals, and they are found on rocky shores in Mumbai, like this one. And this is just one or two of the things. They've discovered many kinds of organisms in the rock pools on the coast, and they do walks. So please, if you're interested, go walk with them once the pandemic is over, and do visit their website. It has amazing pictures. And if your window is anywhere near the sea, I would say take advantage of it, because sea is so dynamic. My final point, we talked about inward and outward, and we talked about tree time and living life, even if it's for 10 minutes, with a different sense of time. My final point about nature during the lockdown is that of connections. I spoke to you about how when I had COVID, I felt, anxious. I felt obviously sad, and but even those who haven't had COVID have felt a lack of connection during the lockdown. They felt isolated and far away from those that they love. They felt helpless. And helplessness combined with isolation is a recipe for insanity, and it's a recipe for sorrow. What I want to suggest is that nature helps us draw some connections between us and the natural world. And also, the workings of the ecological world are very interesting, and they have geographical connections. So, this is a wetland near my house. This is across the border in Haryana. It's a place called Basai wetland. And Basai has a group of wetlands. This is one of the smaller ones near Basai. And what you see in this image, you see the water, you see the reeds, they're going up vertically and they're kind of moving. And there's a bird that's flying. And that bird is flying and it's looking down. And down below in the water, you have a bunch of birds that are basically flapping their wings, and they look very distraught. The reason they look distraught is because the bird on top, that's actually a Western marsh harrier. It's a bird of prey that's trying to catch one of these other birds at the bottom. So this is your epic web of life. This is your epic chain of life moment in which that's the top predator and it's trying to eat the prey. And the birds at the bottom are coots, and they are residents. They live in this wetland, but this harrier is actually a migratory bird. It's come to Delhi. It's come to Delhi NCR. It comes only in winter, and it's coming here to hunt these birds, and that's how obviously it survives. It hunts them, it eats them, and it goes back at the end of its migratory season. And looking at this bird at a time when everything was locked down and we were only getting out a little bit, one day we would get out maybe one day in 30 days. I see this bird which has come from so far away. It's an immediate connection that I draw, that what all did this bird have to do to come here. And even though I'm not able to live my life, we are not able to live our normal lives, there are other things that are living their lives. And that's a very hopeful and inspiring message. And just want to say that birds actually follow flyways in the world. Flyways are basically the pathways they take in the sky, and there are 9 big flyways of the world. Many of them are north to south migrations in obviously the northern hemisphere. When it's really cold in the north, the birds come south. And right in the middle, that light green is a Central Asian flyway of India. So most of our migration, the birds that come are migrating south. They come here in winter, and they come from Central Asia, they come from Eastern Europe, they come from China, they come from Russia. And this is a closer look at the Central Asian flyway. And so these birds are coming basically thousands of kilometers every year, and some of them are actually crossing the mountains. They cross the Himalayas to come to Delhi, or to come to Bombay. I wanted to show you this picture. This is this work done by this organization called RRRCN, and basically they satellite tagged steppe eagles. That's a steppe eagle on the left, an illustration, and you see these squiggly lines on the map. That's actually the way or the path that these birds follow to come to migrate each year. And you can see that some of them have come to India, um, and they come, from over Afghanistan, and they do cross mountains when they come to India. And it's a long path, it's an arduous path, and one that they make every year. And then they're going to go back as well. So it's kind of like a double journey. And I find that very amazing to be able to see a migratory bird, which has come from thousands of kilometers, is amazing for me. This is the most amazing migratory bird I saw this year. It was this year. Just before the second wave. This is the peewit, or the northern lapwing. I'm sure many of us have seen lapwings, but this is the most ostentatious, beautiful, and bizarre lapwing that I have ever seen. So this comes from, actually it comes from Europe. and it comes. It also breeds, in temperate, like in Russia, etc. But obviously, I don't know where this one has come from. And just look at this bird. It's such a crazy bird. It looks like a film reel basically, and it's got that crest. And we spotted it in an agricultural field in Delhi, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere. When we were looking for something else, we suddenly came across this bird, which has come a really long way to come to Delhi and to India. Here it is. This is the field. There was a little bit of water. It likes water. Those are nilgai walking in the background. And of course, a lot of states have declared nilgai to be a menace and vermin. So I don't really know how much longer we're going to have nilgai walking around in fields. But I'm just trying to show you this is literally the middle of nowhere. This is a field. I can't even describe it to you because there are just a lot of fields where everything looks the same. And I don't know how much future agricultural fields have around cities, whether it's Delhi or whether it's any other city which has, whether it's the grasslands of Pune or whether it is the forests of Mumbai, these kind of wildernesses. I don't know how much time they have left, and therefore every winter I make sure I go to the fields near Delhi because I don't know how much longer those fields are going to remain. And sometimes you see these amazing birds which have come from a really long distance. These are Rosy Starlings, which brings me to the last part of my talk. Rosy Starlings migrate to India from Central Asia and Eastern Europe, and they come in these huge flocks. So you can see this is a semal tree. It's got pods now. Those pods are going to break and become silk cotton. And the flock descends on the tree and it fills all the branches. And this is also a bird that creates these amazing murmurations in the sky in which they fly in these formations. They never bang into each other. They basically look like fish, they look like a shoal of fish in the ocean, completely choreographed. And this is my semal tree, and these are the Rosy Starlings on the tree. And I just want to say, I'd gone to Central Asia a few years ago, and I saw these brown looking birds that I couldn't identify. And I made a note of them, and I was like, I don't know what this is. And it took me some time to figure out that these are actually juvenile Rosy Starlings, because I've never seen a juvenile Rosy Starling. I've only seen the adults that come to India. And so it is possible that the birds from Kyrgyzstan are actually coming to India, because we know they come from Central Asia and they come from Eastern Europe. So it's interesting to see a bird in one part of the world and then see it again in another part of the world and wonder if it's the same flock. And this takes me to the really last part of my talk, which is, I just wanted to tell you, this is part of my book, Wild and Wilful. And this was about April last year, when I was really sad because I was extremely concerned about, older people getting COVID, and I felt so trapped in inside my house. It was such a new feeling. I think April last year, it was very new for us to just be alone and to be at home all the time. Um, in locked down April, a group of crows squatted in the same tree. I waited. For 2 years in a row, the rosy starlings had come to the Semal by April. The birds not coming to the Semal in April seemed to build up to a sense of cosmic grief that 2020 had brought so far. The world just did not seem right, and we were all clutching at meaning with no real insight on how to set things right. There were 3 more days of early morning, 6:15 every morning, and there were no rosy starlings. My heart was sinking as rapidly as the heat grew. It became really hot, and my heart kept sinking. And then I heard them, the unmistakable, continuous chitter, a rosy starling flock carrying its entire family, and therefore its entire joy, with it. But I was indentured. My feet were in COVID chains. I could not leave my building to find the tree where the flock had descended. For 3 days, I could hear them but not see them. Perhaps the crows had kept them away, or perhaps, like many wild things, they came and left without a human audience. On the fourth day, I did see them. They were all over the semal, looking like they had never left. And they appeared as naturally indigenous to Delhi as their innate chattering joy. Though they breed in Central Asia, Rosy Starling spends so much time in India between winter, spring, and summer that one could consider them a favorite NRI cousin who is more desi than foreign. The lockdown was a steeped isolation, so dramatic that one could only hear one's passion of birdsong, but not truly head towards it. So desperate that new problems, though small, seemed too big. Yet the bright brown and now pink and white rosy starlings had a message in their open beaks and little jumps. Seize the day, carry your happiness with you. My safety had tasted like a prison. My heart had felt empty. Now it was as open as my eyes were. From my prison of self isolation, it was the rosy starling flock that finally set me free. And I really do mean it. If I hadn't seen the rosy starlings last April, I think I would be much more despondent. And they really helped me feel that life was still moving on, even if we were not moving anywhere. And this year as well, when they came back, it was a joy to see them, and it was a joy to take pictures and just to hear their calls. And there have been many human tragedies in India, but I think nature has been one of those things that continues to move forward, and that is a source of great joy for me. Thank you. We can take questions now.
That was wonderful, Neha. That was absolutely wonderful. And of course, the chat is filled with compliments for your talk. So let me take you a little bit through what people have said. We're quite used to talking about wars and forts and kings and so on. So this was a fantastic break. Just to say that, when you started, you talked about the brown-headed barbet, but actually coppersmith barbet is what we hear a lot in Bombay, and it's
Yeah.
the sort of the bird of chosen bird of Mumbai. And then the next bird you talked about was a yellow-footed pigeon, and
Yeah.
that's the state bird of Maharashtra. So a lot for us to connect with. And as you were talking about your brown-headed barbet, I think Ajay mentioned that he had seen a brown barbet on the guava tree outside, which was very pleasant. Um, then Pankaj mentioned that there's a Japanese proverb that says that all important lessons of life can just be learned by observing a cherry blossom tree. So true. There's a comment from Madhumati that the gulmohars haven't properly flowered in May this year. I do see some flowering, and I think some got disturbed by the storm as well. But do you have a view on that?
It's actually hard to tell because even I have been monitoring trees and they don't flower at the same time every year. And we are trying to figure out what it is because sometimes we have two individuals of the same species at the same spot. So you'll have two samals together or two gulmohar together, but they flower at different times. But I would say it's probably the storm. You may have lost the buds or some of the branches in the storm. And definitely, patterns of rainfall have changed. Every year there's a storm now. And we were also struck by, we were not exactly struck by the cyclone, but when it came Tokte, there was a lot of rain in Delhi and a lot of trees were damaged. Amaldas trees were damaged in the rain. So I would say it's rainfall, but trees also are individuals. It's hard to predict. They don't flower at the same time every year.
So you also mentioned the Shirish tree, right? We have a
Yeah.
street named after Shirish tree in Bombay. It was the Shirish became Cirrus tree, and a lot of people think it's named after Cirrus as a Western name, but actually it's named after the Shirish tree, which no longer exists on that street. Um,
Mm.
Farooq has a question for you. How does one begin to appreciate nature, whether it's lockdown or not, in a jungle like Bombay? What kind of an eye should one develop?
I would say it depends on what you have available. So if the coastline is available to you, then I would suggest going through the Marine Life of Mumbai website and looking at the times at which they are going to observe. Because depending on what you have available, time is important. So for example, if you're looking at birds, then as I said, early morning is good. If you're looking for butterflies, so you'd find butterflies in a colony park. Most colony parks have butterflies. Butterflies is better to go when it's more sunny, so not so early in the morning. So it really depends, do you have a small park with trees? If there's a small park with trees, then one can go there early in the morning to see birds. And certainly, if something is flowering or fruiting, if there's a tree or a bush or plants that are flowering or fruiting, one should observe them at the time that they're flowering or fruiting. And if the coastline is available to you, then the coastline is just another world in itself. I really do suggest going to the coastline, because that is your open space. It's kind of like a green belt. It's not really green, but it's kind of your green belt. So depending on what you have to go at a particular time. It is important to try to go at a particular time which is correct for that species, because otherwise you may end up not seeing anything. But I think the easiest way is to start having Indian plants in your garden, and the animals will come to you.
Um, there's of course a comment that same with me. I've seen the ibises on the ground, but it was quite a surprise to see
Yeah.
on top of the tree. So that was very interesting. There's a comment from Anushka that tall buildings in Hawaii have she's discovered about 20 different bird species just looking at the flowering fruiting trees around her. So a lot of compliments from people who maybe because of the lockdown or otherwise have found that the green spots in Mumbai have given them some
Yeah.
birds and whatever to see. Sahiti has very kindly posted a link to the season watch site, which I think will be useful for everyone. Urvashi's mentioned that she loves the idea of tree time and loves the idea and the beautiful slide of the children observing trees. You were right that that's something that not just children need to do, adults can do as well.
Yeah.
That's something, is that kind of journaling something that you recommend?
Absolutely. I have a nature journal. I don't have a picture of it right now, but I do draw and write whatever I see every day. And I think holding a pen is a tactile experience. It's something that's so wonderful because you are using your wrist, you're using your eyes, you're using your mind. And I draw leaves. I haven't grown up. I still draw leaves. I draw flowers. I draw seeds, and I also collect them and I keep them between my books. And it helps me unwind. So I write notes of everything that I've seen, and if I see some interesting behavior, I will write that down. So that ibis, for example, that I saw in the semal, it appeared to be feeding from the flower, and I've never seen an ibis eat a flower. I've only seen them hunting snakes and lizards. So it was a young ibis. So I don't know, again, nature is unknowable. The more you observe, you find new things. So a lot of my journals have interesting behavior about what I see. But I definitely write a journal every day.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I think Advocate Tanmay Dio has also mentioned that if we create interest of for children in wildlife, we'll see the fruit of that in the next generation.
Yeah.
Anup Dari has said that in an urban city like this, the session motivates you to grow trees and plants in our homes and in our buildings. And I think that's exactly what you intended to say, that growing in our balconies, in our little open spaces is a great start.
Yeah, in fact, Urvashi, if it's the same Urvashi who's a friend of mine, she's growing garlic and she's growing capsicum in her pots, and her kids are growing them for her. So it's like a family activity, and also for a child to take care of something, I think that's a really, I think it's a very big lesson. It's a fun lesson, but it's also, you have to water it every day. You have to hoe it, and it's a relationship. Even a plant demands a relationship in many ways. It's a
So,
nice thing for a child to do.
so right. Tanmay has also recommended that everyone should plant at least one tree on their birthday and then take care of it. And I think that
Yeah.
would be a great start as well. Pankaj has mentioned that residents of Bombay can visit Mahim or Dharavi Nature Park because there are lots of butterflies in in that spot, in the park. Um, so Farooq has thanked you and said, thank you for opening the metaphorical windows in people's minds. Absolutely right. I think everything that you said was both simple and profound. Mm. Pirina's lamenting the fact that the ocean, some of the ocean stuff at Haji Ali will not be visible because of the coastal road. Any thoughts?
Yeah. I've spoken to a lot of people about that. Some people say it's good, but I definitely, I think we tend to take the coastline for granted, and it's only when it gets imperiled or in danger that we think about it. And it's true for many cities. I think, more than anything, I think open spaces are absolutely essential for people. And I really don't think things should be made on the coastline. Uh, it'll take another generation for us to realize we can't just live with buildings. You need parks, open spaces, and horizons as much as you need buildings. It's so important for mental health. And in Delhi, you don't see horizons. In Mumbai, you still can because of the coastline. And as I said, I think the coastline is your green belt. In the sense that it is equivalent to a wilderness, and it should really be protected. It should be considered much more precious than right now it's just seen as real estate. So I do, I think everybody rushes to a park in any part of the world. You go to Central Park in New York, it's full of people. You go to the parks in London, in Delhi, in Kolkata, in Cubbon Park, in Bangalore, it's full of people all the time because we don't realize how much we enjoy being in nature. The malls may be empty. There's so many malls in Delhi that are empty all the time. They haven't got enough footfall, but the parks are always full. There are always people in parks at any time of the day, even in the afternoon, because I think the coastline is precious and it should be protected at any cost.
Anushka's commented that the coots are known as Varkari Pakshi in Marathi.
Okay.
And Anand has mentioned that you cited the harriers. They're very shy and best photographed light.
They're not shy. I don't think the coots would agree. They're not shy when they're hunting, but they are difficult to see otherwise, yes.
Anand's also lamenting that it's sad that a particular state has declared nilgai vermin. What's your view on that? I mean, I do know that they cause a lot of damage to the fields up north, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not just the north. Even Maharashtra has declared some states, some animals as vermin. Wild boar nilgai is vermin for many states. See, I think the first thing is the nilgai is a savanna animal. It's a grassland animal. So you don't actually get nilgai in deep forest. In deep forest, you get cheetal, you get sambar. But nilgai is always in kind of scrubland and grasslands. So then actually its habitat is what I showed you, which is those agricultural fields. And if you have an animal that requires savanna or scrubland, and all that area is taken by agriculture, then you're basically talking about removing an animal from its habitat. And I think I'm not opposed, I'm not saying nobody should touch any nilgai, but we do need to do a baseline study first because we don't have any population estimates. And something that's locally abundant may not be doing so well in other places. So, for example, when that vermin list was being drawn up, Goa wanted to suggest gore as vermin as well. Now, gore is something that people in other parts of India go to tiger reserves to see. So people will go to Bandhavgarh and Kanha to see gore, or they'll go to Pench, right? So because Goa and parts of the Nilgiris have a lot of gore, they think that this is something that needs to be put down. And we need to take kind of like a more zoomed out perspective because political boundaries obviously are not good for animals. They don't follow political boundaries. So I would say we need to do a baseline study first. How many do we have? How many nilgai do we have? In the places where there's overpopulation, I don't think it is wrong to remove them. But they should be taken to tiger reserves where there's a prey problem if that is feasible. But certainly, just shooting them, this is completely unscientific, which is what has been happening.
Um, I think there was a lot of compliments for your reading as well. Somebody's mentioned that This was a lovely passage that they've really liked in the book as well. Um,
Thank you. The book ends on that note. So you're
there's other,
welcome to read the book.
others are looking forward to reading the book. Anand says that your speech and your writing complement each other. Farooq wants to know if there is a way to rejuvenate a dead tree, a dead gulmohar tree. Sorry.
Okay. Dead trees are really important because a lot of birds will nest on them. It still provides shelter. So this is something that some gardeners do, that they put cement in the bole of the tree. Now, I it seems to work for a few years, but I would say if it's a dead tree in a park, it should just be left alone. Like, because what happens is horticulturalists want to fell dead trees. The moment the tree dies, they want to remove it. If it's a dead tree next to a building, I would say the bowl should be filled with cement, because people are afraid that it is going to fall, or it's going to damage their property. So a lot of gardeners do that. They fill the bowl, the trunk of the tree with cement, and that kind of seems to give 20, 30 more years for the tree to stand. And of course, the physics of the tree is still valid. It still has deep roots, and a lot of birds that we enjoy to see, like owlets or some hornbills, they will nest in old big trees. So they actually, a lot of raptors will sit on dead trees. They only seem to sit on dead trees sometimes, dead or dry trees.
Madhumati says that she has a bulbul nest with three fledglings outside her window, and that's her daily therapy. I can just imagine that.
Yeah, I have a sunbird nest. They're
Oh,
so shy though. I don't look at them because they're such. I don't. I pretend that it's not there because I just feel so scared they're going to abandon the nest if I look at them. But yeah, it's such a joy. And when I was growing up, there were generations of house sparrows in my house. Unfortunately, they're gone now. But they would come back to the same place every year and freshen their nest with new lining, and they would have two or three chicks every year.
Snigdha says that she watches caterpillars in her, that you can watch caterpillars in your own plants. Kari patta
Mm.
and lime plants get butterflies easily, and
Yeah.
it's so fascinating to watch the complete life cycle. I was just telling a few of my friends a few days back that oleander, everyone says, is a poisonous plant, but I think it's a host to quite a few larvae and pupa, and therefore a good plant to have in your neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, if it's poisonous, it's not like anyone's going to eat it, right? So, like, desert rose is poisonous, but I grow it because, and if there's some child or some pet which is a problem, then we can be concerned, but otherwise, it's fine to grow poisonous. In fact, milkweed is also poisonous. The host of the tiger butterfly, and I grow milkweed. It's a great plant.
Yeah, I would hope so. Tanmay wants to know how can we increase the interest of children in wildlife and environment conservation and motivate them to do the same?
I would suggest doing those exercises in season watch. I think they're really interesting. When I first heard of them, I thought, is a child going to look at a tree for 5 years? But I think it is possible. To study and monitor a single tree for 5 years, for 10 years, I think it's a wonderful and rewarding exercise. You're kind of growing up along with the tree, and it gives you a sense of the interrelationships. Because if you're looking at a tree, you're looking at the entire ecosystem. You're looking at the birds, you're looking at the mammals, you're looking at the bees and the butterflies. And I think children need that sense of relationship. We don't need to really teach nature from books. Nature exists, by itself. And looking at a tree or monitoring a old tree, can create that relationship with no effort. And drawing the leaves and all is great fun. So I would say go to the Season Watch website, and they have a whole bunch of other exercises as well for students.
Great. There was some discussion about parrots versus parakeets that Mukesh has seen flying from LBS Mark to IIT Powai, which is like a long distance, and he wants to know if you can throw some light on this behavior.
Was it a parakeet or was it a parrot?
I don't think he's sure because he says Rosie ringed maybe parakeets, but then Googled them and found that maybe it was parrots. I wasn't familiar with
We
parrots.
We don't really have parrots in India. We have parakeets in India. We only have one small parrot species, so it wouldn't have been that one. It could have been an escaped pet, but I would imagine it's the Alexandrine parakeet, which is a big parakeet. And they can fly long distances, and they have a very loud, harsh, shrill call. And the thing to do when we see something we don't know what it is that we should note it down. And there are lots of apps now. If we can take a picture, that would be amazing. There are lots of apps that can help us. So Internet of Birds is an app by Accenture and BNHS, in which you can upload your image of the bird, and it tries to recognize it for you. Then there's also Merlin bird app. There's iNaturalist, which can identify other species as well. Because if you know the name, then you can look it up again. So honestly, when I was growing up, there were no apps, right? So I had to go through books and stuff, and sometimes you get it wildly wrong. Like I thought I saw an African parrot once, but it was not an African parrot. So do use the apps. So Internet of Birds, iNaturalist, and use them to identify, and then you can look out for that same species again. Yeah.
Roman has a question for you. Is there conclusive evidence that the rosy starling migrates from Central Asia, or is that an educated guesswork? Have you spotted them in
Mm.
Pasai wetlands ever?
Um, I don't know of any studies in which they've ringed the birds or they've satellite tagged the birds. Normally, we get to know exact point locations of where the bird is going if it has a satellite tag, like the steppe eagle study I showed. But yes, it is an educated guess. They do come from Eastern Europe or Central Asia. Because they're gone from those places and they are in the Indian subcontinent. And Basai wetland, Rosy Starling is not a wetland bird. It doesn't come to wetlands. It comes to big trees. So it could be in a big tree in any part. So there, if it, I haven't seen any big trees near Basai, but in some of the colony parks near Basai wetland, I'm sure it's there. It's a widespread, still a common bird found in any big people tree or any tree that has fruit on it. You'll find rosy starlings.
So we've already discussed his Nilgai question. Which tree species, in your opinion, has the most impact on urban wildlife in Delhi NCR area?
I definitely think it's the people tree because it is so prodigious. It fruits so much. There's also the gular fig, the cluster fig,
Yes.
and whoever lives under the cluster fig probably curses the tree because it it has these big chunky thick figs that fall. But it's a great tree, and I always find bats on cluster fig trees in the night. And the people also has a lot of flying fox, bats. People is a great tree also. People plants itself is most interesting. I find them in central verges just growing by themselves. And I feel like it's a tree that does a lot for the environment because it has these really broad leaves, and it's always cool under a people tree. It has a very good impact on microclimate. So I would really recommend a people tree.
Ranjan has a question about where seagulls come from in Mumbai.
I actually wouldn't know. I'll have to look it up because they must be coming. There are seagulls that come, the brown-headed gull and the black-headed gull. They do come from the north, which is near the poles. They come from extremely cold places, and they come to Delhi and they come to Bombay, and they are seasonal. But I don't know exactly which ones you're talking about. It could be a brown-headed gull. It could be some other kind of gull, but usually they migrate, and sometimes they're in rivers, sometimes they are more towards the shore, and sometimes you'll also find them deep inside the ocean. So depending on which species it is, if it's brown headed, then it's a migrant, then it's coming down for winter. And people should stop feeding them
Yeah,
whatever potato chips or whatever, like they're not supposed to eat that.
I think I'll wind down with Dipali's message, which says that it was a very interesting and informative session. And it's she says that you've not opened a window, but you've opened a gate. Uh, you were used to look out and learn more from.
Thank you so
Would
much.
And with that, Neha, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasant experience talking about the birds and the bees and everything else that you talked about and opened our minds windows. Thank you very much, and I hope everyone will keep this window open and journal more.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.